AP 23/6. I just wish to declare the meeting open and remind you that this meeting is being live streamed and has Zoom available. We have Councillor Sol there on Zoom. So I'm going to commence with the karakia. Whakatau mai te warua. Whakawātia mai te hinenaro. Whakariti mai te tinana. Kia e ai ngā mahi. Ai. Right, we have apologies at this stage from Councillor Crawford and Councillor Coxhead. I don't think there's any other apologies. Do we have a mover for those? Councillor Granger, Councillor Murray-Benge, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. There are no late items. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest that anyone wishes to declare? Seems not. There are no public excluded items. There's no one here for public forums. Oh, sorry. Yep, okay. All right, thank you. There are no presentations, so if we go to our reports, and Rachel is going to take us through the report on the deliberations for financial contributions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Actually, it's going to be a tag team between myself and Adele. This report has been ably written by Emily, but in her absence, it will take two of us to speak to her. So just to take a little bit of a reflection on process, you'll recall that on the 14th of April, this committee adopted a statement of proposal and supporting information as the basis for undertaking a period of further consultation, specifically on the proposed financial contributions for 23-24. You will recall also that we did undertake general annual plan consultation throughout March and April, but that subsequent work revealed that there was some merit in testing further and consulting further on our proposed financial contributions. Through that engagement process, we received 8 pieces of feedback, so 8 submissions, and you heard the spoken views of 2 of those submitters. There were a number of themes that emerged through that feedback, some of which it is important to note is actually out of the scope of this particular engagement. Most notably things that are related to Plan Change 92, which will run their course through that process, or matters which are more appropriately addressed through the long-term plan. They will run through that process, or that are residual district plan matters or matters of financial contributions policy, which are not within the scope of this particular deliberations process. So today is your opportunity to deliberate on the 2 issues and options papers that are attached to this report. And on this note, I'm going to hand over to Adele to speak more fully around how those issues and options papers have been crafted.
Thank you, Rachel, and through the chair. So as we've outlined in the paper, and as Rachel sort of highlighted as well, there's areas into which this consultation then can be considered by council. When we've reflected on the submissions themselves, there are 2 matters under which we've prepared issues and options papers. The first one is relating to the project-specific requests. Within the 17 models that we have and operate for our financial contributions, each have underlying projects associated with those and a recovery mechanism that's either partly funded by rates and then financial contributions, or fully funded by financial contributions. And as part of this process, this can be discussed and the views shared by the developers at the time. We received some feedback in relation to some of the projects and our considerations around those. The recommendation on the table for you today is that we have a recommendation of option 1, and that we can continue with the projects as we've outlined. These have been reviewed by the infrastructure team to confirm that they are still appropriate and the allocation of funding is appropriate, but that council does consider that it defers the inclusion of the northern boat ramp beyond the 21-31 long-term plan period and reconsiders it through the process for the long-term plan 24 to 34. This would result in a reduction of financial contributions of around about $2,000, and this is a district-wide charge. But there are 3 options on the table for consideration of council today, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that explanation.
But if I can go on to option 2, but if you would like to consider option 1 in its entirety first, I'm happy to discuss it now.
So do we have questions from councillors? I know this is a bit to get your head around, but we've done quite a bit of discussion over this through the earlier workshop and through the submissions we've heard. So now's the opportunity to take questions further. So Councillor Wickers.
Thank you for that. So under the recommendations, recommendation 5, it lists 2 things there: A, affordability, and B, specific projects. Can you explain how that recommendation fits into this? I was trying to track those things through and I couldn't.
Sorry, through the chair. So as we sort of pointed out, we've got 2 options for consideration, and within those, they are the issues and options papers that have been provided as the attachments to the agenda today. And within those issues and option papers are the consideration for council to consider which option it would like to go forward with. So that's why there's some generic comments within the overall resolution up for debate with council, because this is part of your deliberation process.
So does that satisfy your concern, or do you want to ask some more, or do you want to think about it a bit more?
So that recommendation 5, where do those 2 options then play out on, and what particular page number?
They are attached to the report.
Yep.
So that is your starting point for deliberating within this meeting, starting with issue 1, which is the issue entitled
Project specific requests.
Project specific requests. I do note that they are they are differently, they're superimposed, whatever the right word is, in the wrong order.
Okay.
Thank you, Murray. Trust you to notice.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, so while you're reflecting on that, I'll go to Rodney.
So with option 1, you've given us a number on how that would reduce the contribution, both verbally and in the report. Option 2, as I understand it, is no change. Is that right? But I can't see what option 3 would do to financial contributions, unless I'm missing it. And if I'm missing it, can you please point me to where I can see it? I realise it's a bit tricky with Emily not being here. She's written the report. But so at this stage, we have the effect of option 1 on the financial contributions, and that's listed on page, because it's rather detailed, as you say. I saw that about page 18 or so, but I couldn't see. Yeah, it's repeated a few times, but I couldn't see where option 2 and option 3 were costed. And I presume option 2 is just stays the same, isn't it? Just a little bit of clarity around what the different options
through
cost.
the chair. Yes, option 2, there is no change in the costs. Option 3, you will see that there is a large number of projects. We haven't considered them. What's been noted is that the reduction in those project costs and whatever council decides would reduce the overall financial contributions required, but we haven't gone through the process of identifying what the individual projects would be.
It does make it a little hard to consider if we don't know the numbers. Through the chair, yeah.
I think I'm correct if you said you wanted to pursue that one and identified specific projects, they could give you, and staff could give an indication fairly quickly, I think. But while you reflect on that, you're comfortable for now? I'll go to Murray.
See, John. Yeah, it sort of follows along with what Rodney has asked, because these objections were raised by the submitters with some fairly specific reasons why they should not be included. And all we've been told is we've looked at it and it's all okay. We haven't actually seen the justification of why they should still be included or why they should be taken out. So we really can't judge whether option 3 is a starter or not, because we've just been told trust us, which seemed are fairly specific questions. I would have thought we would have had a little bit more specific answers fleshed out to give us a chance to make a decision.
I'm sure we can ask for that. Are you in a position, Adele, to give, or Rachel, to give greater explanation of why you consider, staff consider, that these projects should continue? That seems to be the nub of the last 2 questions.
And the impact.
Yeah,
And the financial impact thereof.
ultimately what the impact is, yeah, but the bit that needs to be satisfied first is why they should continue.
Yes, so fundamentally, and I do appreciate that the submission from North 12 Limited in relation to those specific projects at its heart challenged either the fact that there was any growth attribution to it at all, or failing that, the degree of growth attribution to it. What we can say is that our colleagues within the infrastructure services group have responded in detail via a separate process to that submitter, outlining the defensibility in their view of the fact that they are indeed growth projects, and also defending the proportion of growth that has been attributed to those projects. So while I appreciate that specific or finer detail hasn't been presented to you, the view of staff is that they are completely defensible as growth projects, and most of them are within the Te Puke Pongakawa area, except for district-wide reserve acquisition funding, Mokoroa active reserves, and up the 4 at the bottom of that. In considering that submission point, again, the staff advice is that the only one that we concur with the submitter's view in relation to it remaining an input to the model is the Northern Harbour Boat Ramp project, because we haven't yet crystallised our planning as to when and how that project and where that project might occur. So hence the reason why it's being taken out of the 10-year planning horizon within the model.
And just further and through the chair, in relation to trying to identify the costs, it becomes quite difficult when it's not just a district-wide. You're talking specific to Te Puke, you've got district-wide, and then it becomes tables across everything. The permutations then become quite significant in terms of the impacts, but also what we've been working towards to date and what we've been charging to date already, and for the reasons being, so it wasn't considered that the permutations would provide any further detail, enough information for you to make a decision anyway.
Okay, thank you for that. We go to Anne next, and then I've got Grant and Margaret.
So my questions is around what I heard the submitters say, and some of them are around the costs of the financial contributions. In these options, we're just talking about the projects. So I've found this on the website, which is the costs, proposed costs for 23-24. We're not answering in any of these the costs here, which is one of the things that submission talked about. So how has that been addressed, and has there been any reaction to particularly in Mokoroa? It's a big jump up there.
Yeah. So Councillor Henry, we are going to come to another issues and options paper, which is broadly around affordability, which is where you had a theme around the overarching cost of financial contributions, with some arguing that as we are heading into a recessionary phase, that it's a disincentive to development and an impact on housing affordability. That
So
will be coming
we
in
can
the
deal with
second
that then.
paper.
Yep.
But there were, broadly speaking, apart from the one submission which challenged the projects that you've got outlined in this issues and options paper, there was a general theme of the costs of financial contributions being too high, but no further challenge to bespoke projects within the models.
Okay, so going across, councillor Daly.
Rachel, the allocation to growth increase from 10% to 50% that North 12 talks about. They say that all previous years were 10% allocation, but it had jumped up to 50% in this latest round. Is that as a result of the change in the formula for FinCos, or is there some other reason for that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Daly, it's not unusual. I can't answer that specific question on that particular project, but what I can say is that it's not entirely unusual for the degree of attribution of growth to rates to change from year to year. And hence the reason why under a financial contributions regime, your rates for your FinCos for the forthcoming year are revisited annually through your annual plan process.
Also, the Pongakawa water treatment plant enhancement, the fact that they've suggested this doesn't provide for residential growth in Te Puke, could we just have clarification? Was that project was that going to feed into the Rangiora Business Park? Wasn't there a change in purpose for that water treatment plant to supply Rangiora Business Park, or is something changed there as well?
So again, with that particular project, Councillor Daly, I am quite mindful that there have been a number of parallel processes at play in the financial contributions space, and this is one of them. But council has also had close dealings with this particular submitter through resource consent processes, and the challenge around the degree of attribution of growth to that particular project was actually changed and was part of what we consulted on through this second consultation phase. So my understanding is that the infrastructure team believe that the inputs to the model that have been consulted on in relation to that project, which yes, does have an element of servicing for Rangiora Business Park, are completely defensible.
Yeah, and I think I could safely add to that. For those who've been around for a number of years, remember that there are two bores at Pongakawa. One is in use, and I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, staff told us that the other deeper bore was uneconomic to treat that water to bring it to drinkable standard, but with the bringing forward of the Rangiora Business Park came the proposal to be able to use it to supply there. And I don't know the details of how that all works out, but that's my recollection of how we came to that position.
Yeah, on that, I'm not sure if it's clarification or not, but on that second bore, there was a problem with the iron or content of
The mineral content.
And it was going to need significantly more filtration at a higher cost, but it was considered that the supply to Rangiora Business Park would justify spending that extra cost.
Yeah, and you recall Quayside drilled their own bore and the water was not suitable from that, hence the desire to be able to access that Pongakawa water. Okay, so Margaret, you were next.
Yes, just listening to you, Mr. Chairman, it's extraordinarily difficult at times to actually get the right thing. It doesn't matter whether you're a developer or we're around this table. So it's, however, could I just ask, please, Adele, with the Omokoro domain funding, is that district-wide? Does every developer pay it? I should say, of these, which are individual developers in certain areas and which spread across the district?
Through the chair, in the disclosure tables, they are on the council website. It does list the various projects and it does talk to which ones are listed under the district wide. So I'd refer you to that particular document because it actually identifies which ones are district wide. Pardon?
It's basically recreation is district wide.
Yes, that's right.
So a domain, presumably the domain funding would be district wide because it's recreation.
That's right.
That's the answer.
Thank you. Right, back over to Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Chair John. Is it, my understanding is correct that while we had some very detailed response to these from the objectives here, that after discussion with staff, they were satisfied with the answers they got, and that's why they didn't give verbal submissions at the hearing?
Mr. Chair, we're not in a position to confirm or otherwise why they chose not to speak to their submission. But you are right, and I alluded to it a moment ago, that there have been concurrent processes with North 12 Limited in particular, in terms of financial contribution conditions on resource consents, as well as this process, and the themes that are emerging in their submission to this consultation have also been similarly raised, some of which have been reconciled through resource consent processes.
Yep, so back to Councillor Joyce.
So as a Te Puke wastewater treatment plant upgrade, they were asking if this is mainly to do with Rangiuru. So that's obviously quite a big item. I'm trying, because we don't have the numbers, I don't want to focus on the small stuff. I want to look at the bigger stuff, but yeah, what's the answer to that one? Because I'm guessing that is Te Puke specific and it's probably mostly going to be paid for by Rangiuru because it's post development. But is it, what's the response to that question? And the other question I had was the Omokoro domain funding. Is that in good progress, or is it sort of somewhere along the lines of the Northern Boat Ramp that it's a bit in hiatus at the moment? Because that's also quite a big number, isn't it?
So just remember, and I don't want to step in front of the staff who are more knowledgeable than me, but do remember that it is to enable a 1/3 increase in the population of Te Puke. Yeah, so Rachel.
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, and addressing first the Te Puke wastewater treatment plant, I think it's all of those things. Most notably, it is so that part of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade that is rightly attributed to Rangiuru Business Park is attributed to Rangiuru Business Park, and as you're aware, they have their own financial contributions model. That part of the wastewater treatment plant project that is creating capacity beyond the 13,000 that our planned infrastructure is providing for in Te Puke is rightly part of a model for that future population. So it's not impacting the models now. So we have had close examination of the wastewater treatment plant funding splits and believe that they are entirely in order and attributed correctly to the exacerbators. And the Omokoro domain is probably a question that needs to be rightly put to our peer Gary, or our peers Gary and Cedric, and they have been at Rangiuru Business Park, ironically, today. So we're hoping that they can join us shortly to answer that specific question.
Margaret, I think, was next.
I thought it was really good when we made the decision that we'd push for the Rangiora wastewater system to link in with the Te Puke one. And we made that decision some time ago. And I think it's has been a really good one, so long as we can get it fast enough. Could I just ask, though, about this northern boat ramp? If, for example, we got boats coming out our ears, so if, for example, there is a great need sooner than this 10-year plan, who funds it then?
Through the chair. So what we've said is that this will come back through the long-term plan 24-34, and then any further decision can be made. What we've said is that there's probably enough consideration for it not to be included at this point in time, given the feedback from developers, but we will need to work through that process as part of the next long-term plan.
And so further with the cycleways and walkways, is that dependent on NZTA having a contribution?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
So if they don't, it means that that pot happens. It falls back on the ratepayers, or it doesn't happen.
If there was a suggestion that the financial assistance rate percentage was to change in relation to Waka Kotahi's contribution to walkways and cycleways, we would be inviting council to reprioritise or look at its levels of service.
Yes. Okay, councillor Granger.
Oh, yeah, just some clarity for Rodney on the Mokoroa one. There's two things, Mokoroa reserves and the Mokoroa domain. Mokoroa domain exists, and it's a destination playground for people from all sorts of places. So that's why it's in the model. The reserves one, that's the one that's still coming.
Okay, I'm thinking we've just about exhausted no, we've got another question.
So have we mismanaged in the past in any way? Who funds that we haven't been able to charge developers when we should have? Is that the reason for this report?
Through the chair. So we outlined some of the reasons why as part of the consultation, and we did identify that there were some calculation errors. What we have found is that some of the changes that were made to the district plan hadn't flowed through into all the models. What this means is that if we've got any funding difference, you know, most of it is it's not an exact science ultimately when it comes to financial contributions. The timing of projects, the timing of when we receive the money is all unknown, depending on the climate and the conditions in the market at any point in time. So the significance, although there's some changes, there's some pluses and minuses in terms of what we've actually done, and so we're not concerned that there's a financial gap. What we do know is that the largest sort of change that was made is around the concessions given to the rate subsidies, for example, back in the post the GFC of council, where there was a ratepayer charge as against a developer charge, and that's still been recovered over time.
If I could perhaps just ask, I'll come back to you, councillor, but in terms of that, my recollection of the earlier explanations we had, that rather than perhaps errors, it was explained in terms of distortions that occurred over time with changing interest rates and things like that, and that's how these discrepancies arose. Is that reasonably fair assessment?
It's good summing up, thank you.
Thank you. Right, did you have a supplementary, councillor Murray Bench? Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, we'll go down to councillor Henry.
And just trying to understand the difference between the three options. I can understand why the Northern Harbour ramp is an option that's taken out of option one, because we don't know what we don't know about that. Currently, it's not looking like there's going to be a Deepwater harbour coming out of the sky unless we get a meteor or something like that fall into the harbour. So option three, can you just explain how that amendment in option three was brought about? Because 50% down to 10% seems quite a. Is that, well, that's what I thought it might be, but that's what it is. Okay, thank you.
Right, back to councillor Maybench.
Adele, with the plan that is in front of us, if things as recessions come, is there any way that you can renegotiate if needs arise? Does it come back to council, or have you got the ability to do something?
Through the chair, the discretion is council's. So mainly any new projects that come in through the long-term plan. And at that point in time, there's a recommendation to council around how that's going to be funded. And that then is consulted on as part of the long-term plan. And then we continue with that project and receipt of that funding until the end of the project or the capacity is met.
Mr. Chair, would you mind if I just explain one further implication of option 3? So I do appreciate that there hasn't been specific modelling in terms of what the rates implications might be, but I think the advantages and disadvantages, or particularly the disadvantages attached to that option, make it quite clear that if all of those projects were deleted from the financial contributions schedule, you would end up with a significant millions of dollars worth of funding gap, which would either mean they are pulled from that, we don't do them at all, which would have levels of service implications. They're funded by rates, which would, you know what the consequence of that would be, or they would need to be deferred, which is the same, which has a similar impact as a level of service implication. So while I appreciate again that there is not a specific percentage included there in terms of rates impact, the reason for that is because there are a number of courses of action that you could choose to take by simply deleting all of that infrastructure from the infrastructure schedule.
Thank you for that. Okay, councillor Sol, we've got a big yellow hand in the sky instead of a yellow sun. We'll come to you.
Thank you. Yeah, can you hear me? Because I had issues with this the other.
Yep.
Look, basically, I look at this. I've been through it. I went through it again today. We're between a rock and a hard place. We've got a problem. We've just got to deal with it. And so the issues are really quite clear. And I think coming forward in other meetings, there will be things about how we perhaps look at the funding of FinCos or whatever. And I think that's going to be the interesting discussion where we may land with that and the creativity. So my question really is to the staff, with option 1, since you came up with this, are you still quite confident and happy with this option 1 as the one that you would recommend to us? Or are there any other slight changes that you feel you would like to see us make today?
Option 1.
Very short and direct answer. Okay, so Anne, were you? No. Mayor James.
I was looking to move if you're at that point.
Yeah, well, I was trying to get to that point. So if you're happy to lead the charge.
Okay, so I'm happy to move recommendations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5A, option 1, B, option 1, and recommendation 6.
Yeah. Could you please just note yourself and everybody that in option, which is the first, recommendation 5 and in 6, the word indicative should be removed from the wording. Adele.
Sorry, just through the chair, we probably haven't completed 5 yet. There's still a second issues and options paper before you consider. Sorry, through the mayor.
Okay.
So this one is effectively closing out 5B, which you're recommending option A or option 1.
All right. So we don't want, do you want to go back and address this other paper first, or do you want to proceed with the other recommendations?
I'm happy if other active members feel they need further questions answered. I'm happy to let them happen first.
All right, we'll hold back for now, and we'll go back to the other paper then, please, if we could.
So, Mr. Chair, the second issues paper that's in front of you relates broadly or captures all of the themes that emerged through submissions around the cost of financial contributions and the desire expressed by some submitters for a rates subsidy or a rates subsidy similar to what was represented through our financial strategy as we were coming out of the GFC.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Daly?
Sorry, I'm just wondering if, since Gary has now arrived, if we can answer to Rodney's question about whether North 12's concerns were addressed in their submission of the 9th
I
of
think
July.
we had a pretty good explanation, but we can go to, do you want to explain to him? Yeah, that might be a better way rather than Rachel explain. Rodney, if you ask your question again, and then we'll get Gary to address the
And I'll
issue.
get the right reserve this time. So particularly with the Omokara active reserves, where are we up to with that? And does it fall into, in any way, the same sort of category as the Northern Boat Ramp, and that it's still very much, not ready to move ahead yet? Because my impression was that may be the case, but I might be wrong. I mean, if we're going to take out the Northern Boat Ramp because it's not quite ready, we don't have a location, or we're not ready to do it, is that the same for the Omokara active reserve, which I understand is a new reserve?
So no, they're quite different. So the Omokara active reserve is ready to go. We've got valuations. We're just looking at our strategy of purchase and whether that's upfront or over the 10-year period. So it's put on working out that strategy and also where the property owners sit in terms of that space. And very much with the development of Omokara, you can see that the reserve purchases over the next 10 years and the development comes in after that. And so that's about the timing that's been looked at, where the Northern Harbour Boat Ramp is one that's been looked at for a long time. And there's been detailed investigation on several sites, and none have been proven to be satisfactory or get over the line.
Yep. All right. Back to Councillor Daly.
Yeah, and if I may, Gary, the North 12 partnership submission where of the 9th of July to the new regime, they had asked for if there was further clarification around the growth allocation on the wastewater and the other waters, and whether a subsequent discussion had been had that they were satisfied with.
So I think Rachel's probably already said it, but we have provided further information to them, and we provide the clarity for that. And we've provided the clarity on the wastewater in particular that goes, which is exactly the same as the issues and options paper you looked at when the funding increased, which had that allocation between existing population, growth to 13, growth to 16, and Rangiora Business Park. And so the cost of the wastewater treatment plant is broken down into those categories, and the FINCOs match those lines, funding lines.
Because it was suggested that maybe they didn't appear at the submission hearing because they were happy with the new numbers.
We obviously couldn't speculate on that, but we had provided the information.
And through the chair, just note that irrespective of it, whether it's a written or a verbal submission, we treat all submissions equally.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. So Councillor Murray-Benge.
I'm not quite sure what page we're working on at the moment.
So just to confirm that you're considering the issue 1, which is under resolution 5B, and considering whether you're going with option 1, 2, or 3, and our recommendations.
It's on page.
It is on page
14. There is one thing that troubles me, that as we go for so much intensive development out at Omokara, the costs of the infrastructure requirements are going to make it prohibitive for anybody to do anything, or certainly to buy anything. Is there no variation other than charging full amount for intensive type development?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think in response to that, Councillor Murray-Bend, you're absolutely right that our tools are few and limited. That's the same thing. And that is why there is a significant piece of work through Smart Growth to explore other funding and financing options for local government, because it is a significant barrier to responding to the growth challenge that we've got. So that is a significant piece of work for the Smart Growth Partnership, together with Crown Ministers. There's no simple nor immediate answer, and it's not just affecting the Western Bay, it is affecting every growth council in the country. But at least for now, in terms of considering what's in front of you, the tools that we have to pay for growth-related infrastructure or to pay for infrastructure are financial contributions, rates, and other government subsidies. That's the limit of the tools that we have for funding infrastructure.
And because we do a more intensive type development, it should be cheaper to actually provide the services, should it not?
So that's a really good question, and that is a district plan policy approach to densification or greater density within our urban environment. So that is exactly what Plan Change 92, which is where we expect in Omokoro and Te Puke, that's exactly where we expect to see medium density or higher density in our district. And our financial contributions approach responds to that, responds to the need to utilise our land well, and to ensure that that greater density pays its fair share for the capacity it consumes on our roads and in our pipes in particular.
Will that in fact mean that we'll provide more reserved space, open space around as a result?
The reserve space will be provided as per the structure plan annual levels of service. So you'll have the structure plan, for example, at Omokoro with the active reserve. We've already got active reserves at Western Avenue. And then there's a neighbourhood reserve every 400 odd metres. So the idea is you have neighbourhood reserves, which are smaller ones, then the big active reserves, and you have the gullies and non-housing land as well.
It's our present policy, but as we become more intensively developed.
That's based, so Omokoro is based on that more intensive development. So the master plan for Omokoro is based on the more intensive development. So it brings that into, it's already there.
Okay, thank you. We've got a couple more questions and then we'll return to the resolutions. So Councillor Granger and then Councillor Thwaites.
Oh, it wasn't a question. I was just going to second the mayor's.
Oh, okay. Well, Councillor Thwaites.
It's not really a question, it's more of a comment. And I guess if you look at the Tauranga City annual report, they actually detail out the amount of under recovery they make on growth. And they've actually, because we've always sat around the table and said growth pays for growth. So in the Tauranga case, and I believe ours isn't far off it, growth pays for 75% of growth and 25% is just never recovered. Adele talked about us chasing. It's a hard ask to try and balance the two out. But we never win this game as far as council, as far as ratepayers, they never win. They might get some increased benefit from the new shopping centre that they'd like to go and visit. But as far as paying for it, we just don't get there really. You know, I'd like to see it put into our annual report, really, our under recovery on some of our projects. We know the Omokoro wastewater has enjoyed a benefit of under recovery for the last few years. So a big chunk of those homes on the southern side of the railway line have gone in at a lower rate than they perhaps should have. We have the funds in the bank from the sale to the Ministry of Education to fund a big chunk of the already. So that process is, and so that's blurred it a little bit. But, you know, if you hark back to the public meeting we had on Tuesday, the inflationary impact that's going on, we are almost under recovering already on these wastewater charges because we're chasing, costs are blowing out. We've had it reported back to us. It was in a public meeting. So, you know, my word to the developers, get in now because it's never going to be cheaper, really. It's only going one way. So I'm reasonably comfortable with the way it is. We certainly aren't winning. And we're trying to get to 75% in my view. Maybe we should change the mantra, growth pays for growth should, ratepayers pay for 25%. It should be the catch growth.
You don't want, okay, I better stop there. Yeah, right, sounds like you've already made your piece. So, said your piece. So, the mayor has moved the resolutions. So that's basically the one option one for.
Can I just clarify that there's a comment from staff that it should be without the word indicative in resolution 6, is that correct? So
Yes.
I'm happy to take that word out.
Yeah, yeah, it's in both 5 and 6. It's still got the word
Okay,
indicative.
5 and 6, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Because number 5 has two options, right? And option 1, the mayor's clarified for the first issue, but what is the proposed resolution?
I did it for both, so 5A option 1 and 5B option 1.
yep. So it's been moved, the mayor, seconded councillor Granger. Anyone wish to speak for or against? Councillor Joyce.
Just really, it's almost a question again, but I mean, I know it's been discussed whether we might look at this, I think from memory, but you know, one of the chief concerns of developers is funding for recreation assets that are far, far away from where their development sits, right? And our policy at the moment is for district-wide recreation contributions. And I'm just wondering if we could give some reassurance that we're looking at this or we're going to look at this in terms of, is this still a sustainable model? Bearing in mind that an awful lot of spending is happening in one area and has been for some time.
Okay, I'll go to Rachel to comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that is one of the sort of out of scope issues for this particular decision that you are contemplating. But nonetheless, we have heard that point. We appreciate that it has piqued the interest of council. So you'll recall that this work has 2 phases, and the second phase, which we will commence following a further decision from council, is around continuing to investigate the sustainability of a financial contributions model versus a development contributions model, or a hybrid of the two. So we will be inviting you on the 17th of this month to give us that decision in that regard. And part of that mix of that phase 2 work will also be looking at the policy drivers behind either a financial contributions or a development contributions regime. At the moment, if council was desirous of looking at that particular aspect, it would require a plan change because it is a district plan policy.
Okay, you wish to speak to the motion, councillor Murray Bench?
I'd like to speak to the motion. I think this is an exceedingly difficult time for us because we can't do a thing unless a developer comes along and wants to do something, and charging fair and reasonable charges is what you've really recommended to us, and we've really got no alternative but to go down this road. But I still say that the increases for Omokoroa have been suddenly quite significant, and if it turns off development and people can't afford to live there, we all suffer as a result. And so that's been the growth node that we all wanted to have. And I look forward to the report that comes from Smart Growth. And maybe when we've got larger developers, we can look at a separate system and take it off the council's budget and financial bills, and actually do a thing where we have bonds that actually fund the infrastructure on the property itself. And it was done under the Labor team, Mr. Chairman. They decided to remove the urban boundary, and then they changed their minds and went against that. But there's a big development north of Auckland where in fact the bonds all paid for the infrastructure that went on the individual house. And so no other ratepayer was paying for it other than that individual. And I think sometimes if we've got reasonably sized developments, that's something that we could consider, and I hope Smart Growth will look at. But as we support this proposal, I just hope that it doesn't kill our growth at all. It's all very well to say growth pays for growth. If it doesn't pay for growth, that debate goes on. But in reality, it's what people can afford to pay. And as you know, we're hideously expensive to own a home here anyway. So the challenges lie ahead is all I can see. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Well, I support the motion as well. And I'm very pleased that this discussion has come to the table after my 4 years in council and monitoring in the last couple of years of the last triennium to see that what was predicted in our quarterly reports to our finance committees didn't ever seem to be adding up. But what was predicted to come in as financial contributions from year to year did not actually match what the prediction was for that would come in. Didn't match. It never balanced. So I'm really happy that we've come, and if it's been generated by the developers, good on them, for us to be able to examine and look at a more equitable and clearer and transparent model for us to work with. So we're not always continuing have to defend our decisions. That we don't. That's just time wasted. So well done, and thank you to Adele and your team and all the other groups, or whatever you call it, departments that have joined in to collaborate on a council-wide decision of what you've presented to us today. And while there will be winners and losers, hopefully when we move forward and looking at what we're going to decide on doing next, there won't be. It will be all clear and people will be very understanding about why they're paying what they're paying. And I do agree with Don, somewhere along the line, if we can let people know that it's not paying growth, it hasn't paid for growth. You know, we are actually subsidising growth.
Okay, thank you. Come to the mayor and then I'll put the resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, sorry. Perhaps I should. I wasn't looking at the screen. Councillor Souls, I probably should let you go first and you can finish off. So Councillor Soul.
Thank you, sir. Yes, basically, again, as I was sort of saying before, we're between a rock and a hard place. The interesting thing is that this seems to have the shall we say, the least collateral damage. It actually is quite a reasonably thought out way of approaching the situation. And I look forward to, well, I support the motion and I look forward to the discussions on what we do in the future. That's really the big thing. And to be fair, over the years that I've sat in those benches just behind the councillors there, the comment has come out all the time that growth does not pay for growth. And yeah, it'll be a good part of the decision and how we go about it in the future. I support the motion. Thank you, sir.
All right, I'll go to the mayor to wrap it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've tried hard to keep rates increases down, and through at this point, it is not the time to put whacker rates increases on by giving the subsidies to developers. So I'm supporting the what I've moved.
Okay, thank you for that very clear direction. So, councillors, all those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you all very much. As I said, there's no information for receipt, and so the meeting